So I've got quite a lot of stuff here, but we can take it fairly slowly, and if you want to ask a question, make a comment, just feel free, raise your hand, ask a question, make a comment. So we'll try and combine presentation with interaction, if possible. The story of this project, Make It Real project, I don't know if you know it, but the university had the project, the idea of writing its own textbook, and the team of people, Marta, Laura, Claudia and Jos also, they had ideas for how to produce the books. Obviously the idea of the university producing books and a platform material, etc., the idea was not to simply copy, imitate the books which are available at the moment. The idea was a series of books specifically for the university, and that had great implications. The books available around the world, from fairly traditional books like Interchange to more progressive books, they're international books. They are sold in Mexico, they are sold in Japan, they are sold in Saudi Arabia, they're sold in Brazil, in Italy, and they are not written for Mexico, and they're not written certainly for the University of the State of Hidalgo. And so the idea was to produce different material which followed the principles of needs analysis and situation analysis, where you say, who are our students? What English do they need? What do they need English for? And so before I came into the team, the team were thinking in those terms, and they introduced me to one reference that I didn't know, Kumaravativulu, that we all know well now. I didn't even know of his existence, but I did know of other writers, Kanagaraja, Holiday, Pennycook, other writers who had written similar things, saying that global is great, and we have progressed a lot with global economy, with global technology, with global education, etc. But in the final analysis, education has to be local. Education has to be education for Mexico, in Mexican conditions, for Mexican children, for Mexican young people, etc. And if possible, it has to be even more local and even more defined. And in this case, we have the University del Estado de Hidalgo. And so we have English for Prepa, and we have English for the university. And so they were thinking in those terms, and I came in, and I have experience in writing books. I've written many books, and so on. And so I added the kind of practical thing. My first practical indications were, it's impossible, you can't do it. It's too difficult. What are you thinking of? So I was quite negative about the project to begin with because of the difficulty of doing it without experience, because you're trying to do what publishing companies do, you're trying to do what Pearson Longman does, you're trying to do what Oxford University Press does, a really difficult big project. But as I got to know the team, and as we started working, after a while I began to believe, and they began to believe, no, we can do it, it is possible. And so then we started together working on this project, okay? So that's a little bit of history of this project, and it's quite special. I believe somebody told me that the University of Puebla, la UAP, La Autónoma de Puebla, wrote its own book for Prepa, somebody told me, and they told me it was terrible. Well, we are writing this book for the university here, and I can guarantee it's not terrible. It may not be the perfect book for every teacher, etc. Some teachers have different perspectives, teachers have different opinions and experience, but it's a good book, and people we know have seen it, and they recognize that it's a good book. We have a new editor entering the project in August. Her name is Sarah Conway. She's Scottish, so you'll get a little bit of Scottish English, like Sean Connery. Sean Connery's English. And she works with Oxford University Press. She's an editor for Oxford University Press. and so she's worked with books for Oxford University Press, and she's seen what we've been doing, and she's really impressed. She's really impressed. So professional people in the business of producing books have seen it, and they're impressed. So we're getting somewhere. We'll probably have more people here later today, but let me just check a little bit about you here. How many of you are Lely graduates? How many people are Lely graduates? Probably the majority. Not everybody, but probably the majority. How many of you are ELI, inglés como lengua, ¿es ELI? Inglés? No, ILE, right? Sí. Inglés como lengua extranjera. How many of you are graduates from another university, not from here, but from a different university? Right? Somebody, a couple of people, 3 people, who are graduates from a different university in Mexico, presumably, maybe from outside Mexico. And the rest of you probably have training of some kind, maybe Harman Hall, Interlingua, Anglo, Coty, etc., etc., etc. And this is one of the good things about the project and about the university. 20 years ago, 10 years ago probably, but certainly 20 years ago, 30 years ago, most English teachers were totally improvised. They spoke a bit of English, or they spoke quite a lot of English, they started teaching English, and they did the best they could as improvised English teachers. Now, here today, and in the university in general, we have trained English teachers. And that's a big advantage. So there are many conditions and aspects of teaching English which have an impact on the teaching of English. One is obviously the teachers, and we're lucky to have teachers with training here in the university. Another is the size of group, and we hope that in the future, not too distant future, we can reduce the size of groups, but we'll see, etc., etc., etc. Another is the materials, obviously, and we're providing new materials which we hope will be more useful, more successful than previous materials. So I know a little bit about you, about your background. I've been teaching English for 52 years. I've been teaching English for 52 years. I started in Spain. I met a Mexican girl in Spain. I came to Mexico, and I continued teaching English in Mexico. I taught in the BUAP at first, then I taught in the Anglo for many years. I worked with the British Council for 16 years, and I've done different projects recently. For about 7 years now, I've been teaching on the Maestría in the Autónoma de Tlaxcala. And over those years, I've seen English language teaching in public institutions. In the BUAP, when I first came here, I taught in the Prepa Benito Juárez and in Filosofía y Letras and the Departamento de Lenguas. So I've seen English language teaching in public institutions. I've done English language teaching in public institutions. I taught in a public secondary school in Mexico City for 2 years. I taught in the Anglo and did teacher training. And then, especially when I started working with the British Council, I started observing classes all over Mexico, observing classes mostly in public institutions. I must have observed your classes, because you were in a Coty course at one time with me, that's right. So I've done teaching in different contexts, and I've seen teaching in different contexts. And it's good to have both things, to do teaching in different contexts, but it's also very good to see teaching in different contexts, where you're not teaching yourself, you're quietly sitting at the back, and you're watching what happens, and how students are responding, and the interaction, etc. So I've been very lucky in having all of that experience. We're starting off the course that you're taking with this plenary, syllabuses, materials, and methodology.